The frost cracked under his boots like tiny bones. Each step was a violation of the morning's brittle silence. The air was sharp with the smell of frozen earth and old hay, a scent that used to be a promise of warmth and life, but now just smelled of absence. The stable was a cathedral of ghosts, each empty stall a monument to a memory he could no longer bear to look at directly. He came here not for comfort, but for the pain. To feel the shape of the hole where his brother had been. What do you do when the only thing left of someone you loved is a stone-cold memory, and a horse they left behind? Leo's breath plumed in the air, a fleeting ghost of his own. He was a man carved from the same frozen grief as the landscape, his shoulders permanently stooped, as if against a constant, unseen wind. He didn't cry anymore. The tears had frozen inside him months ago, leaving behind a hollow, aching cavern. His hands, shoved deep into his coat pockets, were fists of cold regret. He should sell the place, everyone said so, but selling it would be like sealing a tomb, and he wasn't ready for that finality. He was just waiting. For what, he didn't know. And then there was the horse. It wasn't his, not really. It had been his brother's, a magnificent, foolish purchase Marcus had made at an auction, a destrier of a creature named Ajax, bred for pulling plows, not for the gentle trail rides Marcus had imagined. Marcus had loved him with a bewildered, overwhelming passion, trying to bend a creature of pure muscle and instinct into a pet. Then the tornado had come. It had torn the roof off the old hay barn, and in the chaotic, green-skied aftermath they'd found Marcus, and they'd found Ajax, standing over him, a statue of trembling flesh and terror, a long, deep gash along his flank. After the funeral, the horse had simply shut down. The vet called it a profound shock, an equine depression. Leo called it a mirror. Ajax stood in his paddock from dawn until dusk, facing the line of oak trees where the wind always blew hardest. He didn't whinny. He didn't run. He barely even swished his tail at the flies. He was a monument to a moment, a living, breathing statue of loss. Leo would watch him from the kitchen window, the two of them trapped in their separate, silent vigils. This morning, something was different. The usual profound stillness was gone. The horse was agitated, his great head tossing, his hooves stamping divots into the frozen mud. His nostrils flared, sucking in the cold air as if he could smell something Leo couldn't. A storm coming, maybe. The air did have a peculiar, heavy charge to it. Leo felt a twist of annoyance, a spark in the tundra of his grief. Even this shared, silent suffering, was being disrupted. He unlatched the gate, the iron clang unnaturally loud in the tense air. Ajax's head snapped up. His eyes, usually dull and distant, were wide, showing crescents of white. He wasn't looking at Leo. He was looking through him, at some point in the distance, his ears pricked forward so sharply they looked like they could cut the sky. "Easy," Leo murmured, the word ash in his dry mouth. He didn't know why he bothered talking. The horse hadn't responded to a human voice in half a year. He took a slow step into the paddock, then another. The horse didn't move away, but his entire body was a coiled spring, a landscape of tense muscle and quivering skin. Leo could see the old scar on his flank, a pale, ropey line against the dark bay coat, a permanent reminder. He was close now, close enough to see the fine mist of condensation from the horse's flaring nostrils, to feel the heat radiating from his massive body. The air hummed with a strange energy. The wind, which had been still, began to pick up, whispering through the bare branches of the oaks. A low moan, a sound the farm always made when the weather was about to turn. And then it happened. A sound that wasn't the wind. A deep, shuddering sigh that seemed to come from the very earth itself. It was the sound of stone grinding against stone, of weight shifting after a century of stillness. It came from the direction of the old hay barn. Ajax screamed. It wasn't a whinny. It was a raw, primal sound of terror that ripped through the quiet morning and tore a hole in Leo's own numb heart. The horse reared, a sudden, explosive movement of power and panic, his front legs striking at the charged air. For a terrifying second, Leo thought he would bolt, crash through the fence, and be gone forever, but he didn't. He came down, his hooves thudding into the hard earth, and he turned, not to run, but to face the barn. His body was still trembling, but the blind panic was gone, replaced by a fierce, focused intensity. He took a step forward, then another. He was moving toward the source of the sound, toward the ruined barn. Leo stood frozen, his own heart hammering against his ribs. The wind tugged at his coat, colder now. He should go inside. He should get out of the coming weather. But he was caught, a witness to something he didn't understand. Ajax reached the broken fence line that separated the paddock from the barnyard. He stopped. He lowered his head, sniffing the air, his entire being focused on the dark opening of the barn. The wind howled, a rising note of fury, and with it came another sound, the sound of tearing timber and shattering slate. The horse didn't flinch. He took a final, decisive step across the boundary, and Leo, his own grief forgotten, his own safety irrelevant, found his feet moving, following the animal into the swirling, dust-choked air. The world was dissolving into chaos, but the horse was a fixed point, a dark star pulling him forward into the heart of the storm. He didn't know why the horse was going toward the danger. He only knew, with a certainty that was as terrifying as the tornado itself that he had to follow. The world had become a roaring, spinning madness of black sky and flying debris. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and splintered wood, a terrifying scent that burned in Leo's lungs. He stumbled after the horse, his boots slipping on mud and shattered roof tiles. Logic screamed at him to find shelter, to crouch. Lo, but Ajax was a dark arrow shot straight into the heart of the chaos, and Leo could only follow. The old hay barn was a skeleton of its former self, its roof peeled back to the grimacing sky, and in the center of the wreckage, where the tornado had first touched down, lay the source of that unearthly grinding sound. The war horse. The life-sized bronze sculpture of a charging cavalry mount. A piece of public art Marcus had won at another auction and installed here as a joke, a guardian for his hay. It had been toppled from its plinth, slammed into the earth with such force that the soil beneath it was churned up, but it was broken. A great, jagged crack ran the length of its bronze belly from its chest to its hindquarters. And from within that crack, something moved. Not a trick of the shadow, not a piece of debris caught in the fissure. Something alive, a tremble of muscle, a shift of dark, wet hide. Ajax stood over the fallen statue, his body a taut shield against the whirling wind. He was no longer panicked. He was transfixed. He lowered his massive head, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed at the crack in the bronze. He let out a soft, low nicker, a sound Leo hadn't heard since Marcus was alive. It was a sound of curiosity, of recognition. The wind screamed, ripping a sheet of corrugated iron from the barn's remains and sending it clattering into the darkness. The danger was immediate, violent. But Leo wasn't looking at the storm anymore. He was crawling forward, his eyes fixed on the fracture in the metal. Inside the hollow bronze shell, curled in a fetal position, was a horse. A real, breathing, living horse. Its coat was a deep, sweat-darkened bay, identical to the patina of the statue. Its eyes were closed, its legs tucked tight against its body as if it had been sleeping inside its metallic tomb for 100 years. As Leo watched, its ribcage expanded with a shuddering first breath. Its eyelid fluttered. It was impossible. A trick of trauma, a hallucination born of grief and terror. Leo blinked, expecting the vision to vanish. It didn't. The new horse, the real horse, stirred, its hoof scraping against the inner wall of its broken shell with a dull, metallic clink. Ajax nudged the bronze with his nose, a firm, insistent push. He was trying to help. He was trying to free it. The absurdity, the sheer impossibility of it, shattered the last of Leo's numbness. He scrambled to the other side of the statue, his hands finding the warm metal. The wind tore at his clothes, but his world had shrunk to this single miraculous point. He braced his feet and pushed. The bronze was impossibly heavy, but it had been weakened, its structural integrity compromised by the fall. With a groan of protesting metal, the two halves of the cracked shell shifted apart another few inches. It was enough. The horse inside unfolded itself. It was a creature of lean, powerful muscle, built for speed and war, not for plows. It uncurled its legs and with a staggering, wobbling motion began to rise, It was like watching a foal being born, but a foal that was fully grown, its legs unsure, its head swaying. It stepped out of its metallic womb and onto the churned, wet earth. It stood there, steaming in the frigid air, its sides heaving. It lifted its head and looked directly at Ajax. The two horses stood motionless, mere feet apart, the storm whipping around them. The new horse, ancient and new all at once. Ajax, solid and real and scarred. They didn't touch. They just looked. It was a silent communion, a conversation held in a language of breath and stillness that Leo could feel in his own bones. The new horse took a step, its legs gaining confidence, and pressed its forehead against Ajax's powerful neck. A sigh seemed to pass through both of them, a release of some immense shared tension. And in that moment, watching the two creatures find each other in the maelstrom, Leo broke. The dam of frozen grief inside him shattered. It wasn't a quiet tears. It was a raw, wrenching sob that was torn from him by the same wind that had torn the roof from the barn. He fell to his knees in the mud, his body shaking, the tears coming in great heaving waves he could not control. He cried for Marcus. He cried for the empty stable. He cried for the long, silent months of carrying a pain so heavy, he thought it would crush him. He cried for the sheer, impossible beauty of a horse being born from bronze in the middle of a tornado. He didn't know how long he knelt there, lost in the storm of his own making. But then he felt a warmth at his side, a solid, breathing presence. He looked up, his vision blurred. It was Ajax. The great horse had left the new creature and had come to stand over him. He lowered his head, his soft muzzle nudging Leo's heaving shoulder. Not demanding anything, just staying. His breath was warm and moist on Leo's cold neck. He simply stood, a living bulwark against the wind, his massive body shielding Leo, waiting as Leo's storm passed. The tornado moved on, its roar fading into a restless moan. The rain softened from a horizontal lash to a gentle, cleansing fall. In the sudden relative quiet, the only sounds were Leo's slowing breaths and the soft snuffling of the two horses. Weeks later, the farm felt different. The silence was no longer empty. It was peaceful. Leo still woke up early, but now he walked to the paddock not to feel the pain but to feel the morning. He'd lean on the fence, a cup of coffee warming his hands. Ajax was no longer a statue. He grazed. He rolled in the dew-damp grass. He and the new horse, whom Leo had named Hector, were inseparable. They moved together through the pasture, a matched set, one solid and steady, the other sleek and watchful. Leo had found the old auction paperwork for the statue in Marcus's chaotic filing cabinet. The description was brief, almost dismissive. Life-sized bronze warhorse, artist unknown, circa 1918, provenance unclear. Subject of local myth, gifted to a cavalry officer who lost his own mount in the war. Said to contain the spirit of a loyal horse. He hadn't told anyone. Who would believe him? The official story was that the storm had spooked a wild horse into the barn, and Ajax, in his agitated state, had protected it. It was a story that held enough truth to be comfortable. One afternoon in the early spring, Leo was mucking out the stall the two horses now shared. His shovel hit something solid in the deep bedding. He knelt, digging with his hands, and his fingers closed around something cold and smooth. He pulled it out. It was a brass button, tarnished with age, stamped with a faded insignia he didn't recognize. And tucked behind it, preserved in the dry hay, was a small, sepia-toned photograph. It showed a young soldier, smiling proudly, his hand resting on the neck of a tall, dark bay horse with intelligent eyes and a familiar, sleek build. The horse in the photo was Hector. And the soldier, though a stranger from another century, had his brother's same easy, foolish smile. Leo didn't cry. He just smiled, a real, full smile that felt unfamiliar on his face. He tucked the button and the photograph into his pocket, a secret to keep. He finished the stall and walked back out into the sunlight. Ajax and Hector stood side by side at the fence, waiting for him. He rested a hand on each of their warm necks, feeling the steady, strong beat of their hearts. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But it was no longer a thing he carried alone. It was a story he shared. Sometimes the ones who carry you out of the storm are the ones who were waiting within the stone all along. If this story found a home in your heart, if it made you feel something real, then do something for us. Subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment down below telling us what you thought. And most importantly, press that bell icon so you can be here, right here, for the next story. Because we have a new one for you every day, and the next one just might change everything.